Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Okay, we can start introducing ourselves by just call your own name. 丁好
Peter. Snake. John. Bill. Herb. Jim. Steve. Tony. Steve. Yet another Joe. Alan. Bull. Clint. Hard. Lee. David. Kenneth. Michael. Jack. Marty.
Robin.
Howard. Howard. Brad. Peter. Brian. Austin. Phil. Ron. Dan. Rance. Chris.
Thank you. I think I remember it all. Okay, I turn over to Jim Wilson.
It's wonderful to be down here again. Last month, time is relative. So, we began talking about the four immeasurables. How many were here last month? Okay, so just to quickly reiterate, the four immeasurables are immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. Those are four core practices in Buddhism. And they derive from a sutra called the Metta Sutta, which I passed out last month. Last month we did a quick overview of the practice of immeasurable love. And from the perspective of this tradition of practice, immeasurable love is based on the wish that other people be happy. Okay, so when you love someone, you want them to be happy. Okay? Then this practice is gradually cultivated, and it is extended from people you spontaneously have that wish for, to extended to neutral people, to difficult people, and gradually to all sentient existence. This is cultivating the wisdom of the heart. See? This is cultivating the wisdom of the heart. The wisdom of the heart can be cultivated and enlarged on and enriched just as much as the wisdom of discriminative consciousness, our brain wisdom. Okay? Most of us have had very little experience at cultivating the wisdom of the heart. We've had a great deal of experience at cultivating the wisdom of the brain. So discriminative consciousness separates things out. The wisdom of the heart unites things and sees all things as equal. Okay? So today what I'd like to do is to go into the practice of cultivating immeasurable compassion. So from the tradition of these practices, the distinction between immeasurable love and immeasurable compassion is that immeasurable compassion arises from the wish that other people be free from suffering. Okay? So it arises from the wish that other people be free from suffering. Now clearly there's a lot of overlap between immeasurable love and immeasurable compassion. But I think there's a kind of a feeling difference between the two. Wanting other people to be happy and wanting other people to be free from suffering. Compassion feels to me broader. So you can wish, it seems a little easier in my experience to wish, for example, that neutral people be free from suffering. Seems a little stretching that desire that neutral people be happy. It seems sometimes it seems a little forced when you first engage in it, but wishing neutral people to be free from compassion seems relatively easy. So what I'd like to do is do this practice the way we did last month, and then following that have a discussion about the meaning of compassion, within this tradition. So what I'm going to do is, this kind of meditation is a discursive meditation in the sense that you hold a thought, but you hold the thought in your heart. The beginning is, may I be free from suffering. You always start with yourself. May I be free from suffering. Then the next step is, just as I wish to be free from suffering, so all those who have helped me wish to be free from suffering. May all those who have helped me be free from suffering. Okay. Then the next step is, may all my friends be free from suffering. And gradually we will extend it out. So what I'm going to do is read out loud each step, and I'll follow it by I'll begin by ringing the bell, then I'll read out loud each step, and I'd like you to hold that thought. Okay? Hold that thought the way you would hold in your mind a poem that you particularly like, or hold that thought in your heart the way you would hold like the melody of a song, that you particularly like. That's how you do it. That's how you concentrate on that thought. So are you ready? Okay. May I be free from suffering. Just as I wish to be free from suffering, so all those who have helped me wish to be free from suffering. May all those who have helped me be free from suffering. Just as I wish to be free from suffering, so all my friends wish to be free from suffering. May all my friends be free from suffering. Just as I wish to be free from suffering, everyone I meet wishes to be free from suffering. May everyone I meet be free from suffering. Just as I wish to be free from suffering, difficult people also wish to be free from suffering. May they be free from suffering. Just as I wish to be free from suffering, all people wish to be free from suffering. May all people be free from suffering. Just as I wish to be free from suffering, all creatures wish to be free from suffering. May all creatures be free from suffering. Just as I wish to be free from suffering, all those dwelling in all realms wish to be free from suffering. may all those dwelling in all realms be free from suffering. Just as I wish to be free from suffering, all deities wish to be free from suffering. May all deities be free from suffering. Just as I wish to be free from suffering, all living things wish to be free from suffering. May all living things be free from suffering. Just as I wish to be free from suffering, all awakened ones wish to be free from suffering. May all awakened ones be free from suffering. Just as I wish to be free from suffering, all sentient existence wishes to be free from suffering. May all sentient existence, near or far, throughout all space, throughout all time, living, dead, or yet to be born, whether they dwell in this realm, a heavenly realm, a hell realm, a dream realm, an imaginal realm, or any other realm, whether known to me or unknown to me, whether enlightened or deluded, may they all, without exception, be free from suffering. Did you enjoy that? So, do people have questions on this kind of practice, or from last week also? The practice of, if you do have any questions, please, I don't mind in the middle of my talk people asking questions. So, the practice of immeasurable compassion is based on the spontaneous wish for others to be free from suffering, which takes us back to the first noble truth of the Buddha. And the first noble truth was that, all people are suffering. That was one of his central insights into our condition. So the chief obstacle to the practice of immeasurable compassion is not having clarity about what suffering means. Last week I talked about obstacles to the practice of immeasurable love, but the chief obstacle in the practice of immeasurable compassion is simpler, and that is not being clear about what suffering means. So I'd like to explore, what did the Buddha mean when he used the word suffering? The Sanskrit is dukkha. What did he mean by dukkha? It was like this Here's the first noble truth: all people are suffering. It's not an obvious truth. A lot of people would disagree. A lot of people would say that they're just fine, thank you. So, one of the ways that I've found helpful in entering into the first noble truth is asking myself, what is it that the Buddha saw when he made that statement? I mean, the Buddha is a reliable source. Okay? The Buddha is reliable. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt. like that he really was seeing something important, and that's why he put it there as the first noble truth. And then sort of take upon yourself the task of looking around at you and trying to see what it is that he saw. Like when he said that all people are suffering. It's interesting in the sutras, he said that there were two main causes for suffering: clinging and craving. Clinging and craving are the sources of suffering. And that is what he saw. That's what he saw when he said that people are suffering, and not just people, like all sentient existence. Even gods, are suffering. This craving and clinging is the source of suffering, because everything is constantly changing, and everything is impermanent. So, if the clinging to things, causes suffering, because it's based on the idea that something will remain static. So it causes frustration. Yeah? So we can all think of times when that has frustrated us. So take it into your own life and also watch other people. That is the source. So there's different, the English word suffering is, it's an okay translation, although over the years I've come to view it as a little bit off center. I wouldn't say off target, but not exactly a bullseye. And the reason is that the word suffering covers a very wide range of experiences. There are various forms of suffering, such as physical suffering. So, like when we stub our toe, or when we eat a pizza that, like the whole pizza. And have, suffer indigestion, or those kinds of things. So like having a body produces these kinds of ailments, or discordances, And some people interpret dukkha in that way. I call it the stub-toed version of dukkha. And what you will read in those kinds of interpretations, or those kinds of glosses on dukkha, is that suffering it's on a scale. There's suffering and there's happiness. So that you have you have moments of happiness and then you have moments of suffering. I personally find that interpretation inadequate, because not wrong, but inadequate or incomplete, because the Buddha what he was getting at was that even our happy moments are dukkha. Now, he wasn't saying that happy moments don't exist. Happy moments exist, and painful moments exist also. So I would substitute the word painful for suffering on that scale. But painful moments and happy moments are equally dukkha. See, that's the point. Why? Because the happy moments will pass, and at a certain level, we are aware of that. At a certain level, we understand that. When I love to listen to people in coffee shops. Are very good. I suppose this is snooping and eavesdropping, but I learned so much. But you hear people say things, like, I wish this could last forever, or I'm having such a good time in this class. It's too bad it's going to end in 6 weeks. Things like that. Or the concert last night. Oh, it just blew me away. I was so upset when it was finally over. So that's an awareness of dukkha rising to the conscious level. That's an expression of dukkha. You can hear that in ordinary speech. All the time. That is insight into dukkha. So that wish that something would last. But simultaneously knowing that it will not. Then there's social suffering, or sociological suffering. So racial discrimination, sexual discrimination, religious hostilities. Those kinds of things are a source of great suffering, in the world. Sometimes. Western critics of Buddhism say that Buddhism is not enough aware of this element of suffering, of social suffering. I think that criticism is, once again, misses the mark. The Buddha was aware of social injustice. In his own time, for example, he worked quite hard to undercut the caste system. That was a specific way in which he sought to alleviate suffering. But once again, the core insight of the Buddha's understanding of suffering is that it arises from craving and clinging. Social injustice also arises from craving and clinging. It's not that you have craving and clinging and social injustice as separate categories. For example, clinging to a particular social arrangement in which one group dominates over another is a very good example of the mind which reaches out and wants to keep things static. And it produces tremendous suffering. It produces suffering for the victims, but it also produces suffering for the person who is engaged in clinging to that structure. So does that make sense? So it's what I'm trying to get at is that it's not one or the other. That the social injustice we see around us arises from a certain kind of mind, a certain attitude of mind. And Buddhism the Buddha identify that kind of mind as craving and clinging. So once again, it's not that social injustice does not cause suffering, but the cause of social injustice is in an attitude of mind. Then there's psychological suffering. That's when we go to a therapist, or lean on a good friend. I feel terrible. Nothing is going my way. Psychological suffering. Psychological, Buddhism has a very, very sophisticated system of psychology, but Western psychology starts, from different premises, and some of the premises are that, a good state of consciousness will be, free from suffering states and seeks to look into the psychological suffering of an individual by tracing back their autobiography, to a causal origin. Buddhism would see psychological suffering once again as deriving from, guess what? Craving and clinging. Okay, craving and clinging. But I don't view the two as, once again, I don't see an either or here. Just as sociologically constructed suffering is a form of suffering, also psychological suffering is a form of suffering. One of the things that I've observed with people in therapy is that if they have a meditative practice, meditative practice is very conducive to investigating psychological causes of suffering. Primarily what I've observed is this, that a meditative practice gives someone a place to stand in order to observe themselves, a neutral place. So when people do not have a meditative consciousness or have not developed a meditative awareness or understanding, it tends to be like a neurosis interpreting a neurosis, and you get that phenomenon of sort of going around and around and around in a circle and never sort of getting out of it. So I view the two as very complementary, to each other. But ultimately, Buddhism would say that the cause of psychological suffering is released in insight into the core nature from which suffering derives, which is a state of consciousness, a state of mind, which habitually clings to phenomena. Phenomena means ideas and feelings as well. So not just clinging to, say, this room, or it's important that we understand that clinging can take place on very subtle levels. In fact, it's been my observation that the strongest area of clinging for humans is in the idea realm. That's where people cling the most strongly. People are willing to, give a kidney to someone they love, or sacrifice themselves in battle for some cause, but if they strongly identify with an idea, it's very, very difficult for people to let go of that. We've all had the experience of meeting someone that we don't know very well, and we make a joke about an idea that they hold very dear. And so the reaction that arises from that's the result of clinging. That's the result of identifying with that idea. It's very, very intense. It's part of the human condition, part of the result of our very developed brain. Then there's existential suffering. So, so existential suffering is that feeling or that insight that there's something wrong, with existence. Existence is unsatisfactory. I thought existence was going to work out this way, but it doesn't seem to be working out that way. So, in the monotheistic tradition, existential suffering is often centered around the problem of evil. If you're embedded in the monotheistic tradition, then there's always this problem of how could an ultimately powerful and ultimately loving presence produce this world. That's a source of great existential conflict, and has been in the monotheistic tradition for many, many centuries. But there are other sources of existential, anxiety and suffering. For the Buddha's life is a very good example of that. Raised as a prince, and then he finally gains this insight as to what is the point of being a prince. For a few years, and then you die like everybody else. The good die, the bad die. Everybody, same fate. And so what's the point? No point. So that was his existential suffering. That was an existential crisis for him. What is the point of being here? Are you born and then you just sort of truck along and then that's the end? A really wonderful expression of this is the book of Ecclesiastes. Like Ecclesiastes had this down. The vanity of vanity, all is vanity. Like I looked at, like I saw people pursuing wealth, I saw people pursuing fame, I saw people pursuing knowledge, I saw people pursuing this, and it was nothing but chasing after the wind. Vanity of vanity, all is vanity. Woo! So it's like, so it's very, very insightful. So that kind of existential suffering can be very, very conducive to spiritual practice. Very conducive to spiritual practice. I congratulate you if you are suffering existentially. It's a very firm foundation for spiritual practice. In the Zen tradition, existential suffering is called great doubt. Great doubt. It's considered one of the three essential elements in practice. One is great trust and the other is great doubt. So that's a nice conflict. But but great doubt, the great here refers to this kind of questioning. Like what is the meaning of life? The big questions. The Buddha tended to emphasize what I would call psychological suffering and existential suffering. When he spoke, those were the kinds of suffering that he, targeted. Those are the kinds of suffering that are most easily seen to be linked to craving and clinging. Like this state of mind. So in traditional Buddhism, which arises out of an understanding of reincarnation, they will say that you have had this mind which clings since beginningless time. My teacher once said to me, I had had this mind since I was a rock. So it's so it's not surprising. It's not surprising that it takes some practice and some meditation to overcome this habitual tendency to cling to things. So practice is necessary. One of the ways of overcoming this is by developing the four immeasurables. Immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. The central insight of the Buddha was the connectedness of all things. Everything is connected, yeah? So this is an expression of that connectedness. When we feel separate, the feeling of separation is caused by that clinging mind. That's the root of that. Okay? That's why these practices of the four immeasurables are an antidote to suffering. Because it is the feeling of separation which is the core gesture of clinging. When that feeling of separation falls away, then suffering ceases. So we've all had moments where that sense of separation has fallen away. Some of us have had those moments in nature. Some of us have had those moments listening to a beautiful piece of music. Some of us have had those moments on a perfect afternoon with a friend, where there seemed to be no separation. So, and it is, if you recall to your own mind those experiences, and I believe everyone has them now and then, how restful and serene and peaceful that is. But what the Buddha understood was that those experiences can be cultivated, you see, that's, sometimes that insight does arise spontaneously in people. But what people don't realize is that even though that insight arises spontaneously, you can use that as a foundation, for developing your own sense of the true nature of things, which is the interconnectedness and interdependence of all of existence. Yeah? So practices like the four immeasurables are systematic approaches to developing that sense of connectedness that we all spontaneously have at certain times. So it's a very wonderful approach because we all can plug into those experiences on our own. Like it isn't like something that's brought outside. We all have had experiences of spontaneous love. We've all had experiences of spontaneous compassion. See, so we know what these practices are referring to. In contrast, like I'm primarily in the Zen tradition, but it's baffling to people when they first hear about this spacious mind. It's like they feel that, I mean, they have had an experience of it, but it's like so quick, it's not recognized, so that, and that's where in Zen, where I talked about great trust as one of the elements, that's where any kind of non-discursive meditation requires great trust, because people don't feel they have that experience. If you sit long enough and you do this kind of practice, that spacious mind will appear, and it does. But it does take that trust at the beginning, because oh yeah, it is spacious. It doesn't feel spacious. On the other hand, the practices of immeasurable love and immeasurable compassion are based on experiences that we've already had, and that we can already recognize. So it's a very good foundation. Very good foundation. One of the ways that you can also work with compassion, immeasurable compassion, is by bringing in synonyms for suffering. May all beings be free of suffering. May all beings be free of suffering. So, as I went over the various kinds of meanings for suffering, it's my understanding that the Buddha focused primarily on psychological suffering and existential suffering. It's exploring your own mind to clarify the meaning of suffering, what you would use as synonyms for that. For example, anxiety. Anxiety is I think that's a good translation of dukkha, that human existence is anxious. Why? Because everything's impermanent. Oh no! Although, sometimes it's really nice when things are impermanent. So, when your boss is giving you bad news, for example, then you like it. But most of the time, we don't. So anxiety, anguish. Anguish is an extreme. But we've all had that experience. Anxiety, anguish, dread. So if you're into existentialism, you like this one. What's in store for me today? I know the universe has got something up for me. So, that kind of emotion. Then there's another one which Roshi Aiken likes this one a lot. Unsatisfactory. Unsatisfactory. I've noticed some other. Unfortunately, the word is kind of awkward in English, and you find yourself saying things like unsatisfactoriness, which is, but the idea is clear enough, we feel like our life is unsatisfactory, because, we struggle to achieve certain goals, we struggle to achieve, wealth or position or fame or a house or a new car, and then it's not what we expected. It feels unsatisfactory. We struggle for a promotion and we get the promotion, and man, what a bust. The money's nice if I ever have time to spend any of it. That kind of relationship. That sense that things just never settle down into a satisfactory state. Or if they do, it's like 10 minutes on Thursday afternoon. Then another synonym would be fear. The human existence is filled with fear. Our psychological existence is filled with fear. And finally, ignorance. So a lot of the meaning of dukkha is ignorance. Ignorance of the fact that everything is changing. Ignorance of the fact that everything is interconnected. ignorance of the wisdom of our heart. That dukkha encompasses that as well. It's one of the very interesting things that I've observed, that in the practice of the four immeasurables, immeasurable love, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity are uniform in all the traditions of Buddhism which practice these four immeasurables, and most schools do. Immeasurable compassion diverges between, there's a strong divergence about how this is brought about. The practice that we went through very briefly this morning is based on the traditional Theravada approach primarily, and the understanding of Buddha Gosha. But in the Mahayana tradition, they talk about immeasurable compassion versus great compassion. And I just want to briefly talk about that. In another talk, I'll go into it in more detail. But so the distinction is that immeasurable compassion is the wish that all people be free from suffering. And great compassion is the vow to bring an end to suffering for all sentient existence. That's the bodhisattva vow. So in the Zen tradition, they have those four vows. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. It begins with sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. That's rooted in this. It's a different interpretation of immeasurable compassion. In cultivating this kind of compassion, you would extend your vow to save all sentient beings, further and further and further out. So, for example, my teacher, every morning, he used to do some, in his personal practice, he had a series of vows, some of which were, I will freely project myself through all space in order to save all sentient beings. I will always be born in a Buddha land, life after life after life, in order to save all sentient beings. That's rooted in this kind of practice as well. So there's a slightly different emphasis. One is the wish that all sentient beings be free from suffering, and the other is taking on the task of releasing suffering of all sentient beings. So, which do you like? Are there any questions or comments on this? Was that helpful or clear? Okay. So, do people want to continue exploring the four immeasurables? Okay. Well, thank you very much. May we all awaken immeasurable compassion in our hearts and save all sentient beings from suffering. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.